Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Jack of All Trades. I'm your host, Jack Allen, and today we're going to continue with our series on authors in Bethel Park. Today we're having Kristen Normau, and she's going to tell us a little bit about the history through a book that she wrote a few years back. Hope you enjoy the show today. I've known Kristen actually for a while, and when we decided to do this show, we had Mrs. Gilliam talking about her book, and I thought, well, we have to find another author in Bethel Park that we can do this as part of the show, and your name came to me right away.
Well, thanks for having me here.
Welcome to the show.
I appreciate it.
And just give us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, well, I am now it's almost a 23-year resident of Bethel Park. My whole family grew up in Bethel Park, and that's where I wanted to be. So my husband, David, and my son, Zachary, grew up here. Or David didn't grow up here, but my son, Zachary, we moved here in 2001. And my family's been here since 1955, and
a long-time resident.
Yeah, we've been around for a while, and I'm an Art Institute of Pittsburgh graduate, Point Park University, and I currently work for Howard Hanna Real Estate Services, and I'm a huge fan of Bethel Park. Love the community.
Yeah.
So glad to be here. It's the one place I wanted to come back, just because this is where my family's from.
No, good. Well,
John and Janet Normau,
who
who you know, they've been long-term residents.
The American Legion with John and Janet. In fact, I was down at the Holiday Retirement Center last Friday, just giving a little talk about the Bethel Park. And Janet's twin sister, Joyce,
yep.
is actually a resident there. So we talked a little bit about it, and I knew she was, but I forgot all about it. And I was like, wow, that's Janet
nice.
sitting there, or that's Joyce sitting in the audience. So
hard to tell them apart sometimes, right?
I've seen Janet so many times that I'd know her anywhere. I know her anywhere. So we're going to talk a little bit about your book that you wrote, and I can't believe it's been that long ago. I still have my autographed copy in my office upstairs. So.
Oh, well, thanks.
But what inspired you to write or put this book together?
I was a member of the Bethel Park Community Foundation in 2005 and had been a trustee for about 6 years. And there had been some discussion about doing a coffee table book, just pictures, maybe now and then, stuff like that. But in the meantime, I got communication from Images of America, Arcadia Publishing, who does the Images of America book for Bethel Park. And they said, do you think there's anybody who'd be interested in doing that? And I was like, yes,
yeah.
That sounds amazing. I would love to do that. So I volunteered to do it, entered into a contract with them, and then set out to get it done because it was a good fundraiser for the Bethel Park Community Foundation, because they donated 50% of the sales of the books back to the community. Like the community would buy them at cost, and then the other half of that money would all go back into the community center or the community foundation. Right.
Yeah.
So I said, why not? And that started that journey. I tried to go to the Historical Society at the time, and they really didn't have a whole lot at that time. Like, it's really amazing now what they've done with it.
You just don't recognize not only the building, but certainly what they've put in there. In fact, they have one of the largest veterans rooms. It's just amazing.
I love that so much. I think that's fantastic. And I mean, they always had the one room over at Bethel Presbyterian Church where the foundation of Bethel Park began. So they
Okay.
had that. They have a room over there with a lot of the documentation, memorabilia, and all that over in that area. And they have Bethel Cemetery, which has been there since
Right.
before, the inception of Bethel Park. So it all kind of started over there. And now the Historical Society has so much. So there's so much history here in Bethel Park that's so accessible, and I love that. So, but at the time, they didn't have as much. So at first, I was feeling a little nervous about trying to get all this done because Arcadia had a deadline, an 8-month deadline. And I wasn't.
So is Arcadia, because they have the same publication in different, I mean, I saw one in Clairton. I grew up in
Right.
Clairton. So you signed a contract with them to publish a book about the local, is that how that works?
It does, yeah. I think they just go out into the communities looking for organizations like the foundation or the community foundation or the historical society, and they ask them, if they don't already have a book about that community.
Okay.
But they have them across the nation.
Right.
So, you can find one on Mount Lebanon, Scott Township, Bridgeville, and Bethel Park hadn't had one yet. And I was really excited to do that. And what ultimately ended up happening is I took a whole summer and went door to door because there really wasn't a whole lot of photography, because the book is basically a photography heavy book. And there wasn't a whole lot of photography all in one place, So I went to Virgilia's house, and I went to the Wells
half the
house.
book.
Yeah, honestly. So what the great part about that is not only, I think if everything's in one place, you don't get to hear the stories
Right.
firsthand. And I actually got to hear all the stories firsthand and meet the people and see family photos, and it kind of kept growing and growing, and it was really quite the amazing experience to put it together.
Yeah. So how long did it take to put the book together?
8 months. So they had a deadline of 8 months. I asked for an extension. They said no. So I
Yeah.
was like, okay, we're
I
going to
have to
get
get it
this
done.
done. Yeah, exactly. So I went around to businesses. I went and talked to John Walsh at Bethel Bakery, and I went and talked to the Tischlers, and I went and talked to the people who own Kiefer Coal and Supply, and it was just going, and then this person would recommend this person to talk to, and this person would recommend this person to talk to, and the Wasco family over in Mullenauer had a lot of information because they grew up in that mining community.
Sure.
And and then I talked to a bunch of families who had history in Coverdale. And so it just, this person said, go here, talk to this
Yeah.
person, Bill Canals over there, and so it
Well,
was
Bill would
just
certainly know a lot about Bethel Park.
absolutely. He was so fascinating to talk to. He really was. I remember sitting with him in the community center for hours. And
Oh,
him just
sure.
relaying story after story after story. It was a blessing to be able to do that, and I'm so glad that I, got the opportunity to do that.
Yeah. Well, we did, I believe it was our last show with Henry, who used to work at Bethel Bakery, and Billy Sevar. And, I mean, he just has a ton of pictures. A lot of it has to do with sports, like in the 1950s. And,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just great to see that history. And what's nice about your book also is the fact that there's a lot of names in there. I mean, you have pictures of Park Avenue School, but then you have the class sitting in front, and some of the people are in, by name.
And that was fun too. And there was so much more information out there too, that there definitely could probably be a second book on it. And
Are you giving us a hint?
Oh, I wish I was. I don't know if Arcadia wants one, but if they wanted one, I'd be happy to do another one because there was just so much information. And then every generation has their memories
Sure.
tied into different things. Like, you get some of the silent generation or the boomers remembering some of the the really old things, and then you get into like the 50s and 60s, and people remember Isleys and Verscherens
absolutely.
and stuff like
Pro
that.
folks and
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, the stories of the Pioneer Inn down by
yes,
McDonald, where McDonald's is now
yes,
on Fort Couch.
yep.
And people remember the Pioneer Inn, and then some of the other people are like, what was that? So you get to explain it all.
Oh yeah, if anyone moved here after, well, I don't even know, 1990, they missed Eaton Park, where it is now, used to be on the other side of the road.
Right?
and you'll tell people that, and there was a car wash there. I remember that.
Yeah.
And people would say, no, it wasn't. So, yeah, well, I grew up in Baldwin, but we were always, did the route between Eaton Park and the drive-in and just did a little circle, and that's what people did.
Exactly. And when I was young, I lived in Bethel for a couple years in Oakhurst. So I remember the drive-in there, and I remember there was like a restaurant, some inn down at the corner where like National Tire and Battery and Pasta 2 are now. Like there was an old inn there. Do you remember the name of that?
I do, but I can't remember. Parkside
Inn, right? Yeah. Parkside Inn.
Yeah.
And I remember that from being a kid. And I went to John McMillan School, which isn't even there anymore. It's the UPMC
my daughter
building.
I think she was there for their last year at McMillan.
Oh, is that right?
Yep.
Yep. And then they tore that one down. And I mean, it's been an expanding and growing community.
Yeah, well, they tore Logan down. Logan School.
They did. Well, that's now a senior residence too,
that's
right?
the residents of Bethel Park.
Right, yeah.
And it's amazing, and they'll talk about tearing all the schools down, all the elementary schools. So probably in 15 years, people that move in say, "What do you mean you had five elementary schools?"
Right?
So, but
I know.
we're going to keep a couple here in Bethel, and then we'll see what the school district sells the other ones off to. So our long-range plans are making parks out of those, and especially Ben Franklin, which is so big.
Right. That's the biggest one, right?
Back. Well, they have so much property.
Yeah.
So that'll be nice.
And in the book, it shows you the 4 schools that started there. Like the interesting part is that you can still drive and still see a lot of history around Bethel Park. Like at the intersection of Horning and Baptist, there's the old Croco house, which whoever is living there now did a beautiful job in renovating the house. But right up from that on Baptist is just a small house. You would never think of it, but it was the original Croco school. It was one of the original schools.
Oh.
And it's still there. You can still drive by, and it still looks pretty much the way it did when it was there.
Oh, yeah.
And then
now, do you have a picture of that in the book too, or no?
Yeah, there's a picture of the house
Okay.
in there, of the school in there, but it is now a house, and it's and like the old there's a house on the corner of Highland and West Library.
Yeah.
That comes up there. And at the time, I think the Bastianinis own it. I don't know if they still do. I'm pretty sure they do. That was one of the very first houses in a housing plan in Bethel Park. So it was called Summit Ridge, and that house right there, that big old Victorian, it's a yellow Victorian that stands right there, is still there. And
we did a show years ago about older houses in Bethel Park. So unfortunately, those two weren't included, but now
that's what I said. There's so much history there, and I don't even know if the owners of the Croco house know, but there's Crocos buried on their property.
Yeah.
Before the cemetery, and then there's a marker up at the cemetery in Bethel Cemetery for them, but actually I think their family members were buried on property. Wow. Yeah, exactly.
Well, we found out that right on going down Broughton Road, I can't remember what the turnoff is to the main development back there, but there's a house there with a grave right in front of the house, and it was Mr. Finley.
I didn't even hear about that.
Who actually, they named Finleyville after him. Now, while he's buried
in Bethel Park.
Yeah, but he's right on the corner, and you could see if you're driving down Broughton Road, you look up, you can see the grave right there.
Wow. I'll have to go and, definitely take a look. Like I said, there's so many more stories that can be incorporated into something new. So hopefully, Arcadia might be interested in doing something.
Well, it sounds like you can have certainly volume 2.
Oh, for sure, for
So,
sure.
I mean, there's a lot of different pictures in there. What was the most inspiring or that affected you, saying this is great, I found this, or do you have any?
Oh, all of them were pretty amazing to read about. I think some of the things like when Pittsburgh Terminal Coal built Coverdale. These were like 4 square houses. Have you been in the houses up
Yeah,
there?
well,
I
yeah,
mean, they're
yeah.
small, and there were over 200 of them, and 2 houses shared 1 bathroom out back. It wasn't even in the house. And there was this one family, the Puglisi family, and they raised 12 kids in a 4 square
house.
house. And and hearing those stories, hearing the stories, and seeing the pictures of their families and how they lived, and and we're grateful for how they lived.
Yeah.
Really kind of touched my heart,
Oh.
considering that, how much we have now, and
Yeah.
how much the township has grown and everything like that.
Well, I actually grew up in the projects in Clairton, and I would take my kids up there and say, look, this is where I grew up. It was like Army barracks.
Exactly,
Because
exactly.
they don't appreciate what is here today compared to what was here 50 years ago or so.
And I think that's important. I think that's an important part of history is
Sure.
understanding where you come from and seeing the progression.
Yeah.
Like here are these people, like where you lived, and these people living in, 2-bedroom houses with tons of children. And then even in the mining towns, like especially Coverdale, like there was the company store.
Yep.
And you weren't paid with money, you were paid in script.
Right.
And script were those little coins that, that the people
Yeah.
got. And then they had to go to the company store, which was owned by the mining company, to buy everything.
Yeah. And they still have some of those down in the Baptist church down there. They have a little display of Coverdale down there, which is great. Getting back to the book, is it still available?
It is. It
Okay.
absolutely is.
And how would one of our viewers? I mean, you inspired them to buy it. So how would they do? How would they go about doing that?
It's actually on Amazon. You can go on Amazon. You can get it in the Kindle version or the paperback copy. You can probably go to any Giant Eagle. They have those round displays. I'm not sure if the library or Evie's, I think they all sold out because when we kept them locally, it benefited the community foundation. So I think they sold out of those, but they're still, I mean, you go to Barnes and Noble, it's there. You go into your local Walgreens, or you go into a Giant Eagle, or you just, you go into Amazon, and it's all, you can still get them there.
Right. Well, we appreciate you coming today, letting us know about a little bit of the history or where to find the history of Bethel Park. And again, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yep.
I really appreciate it.
Well, I hope you enjoyed our series on the authors in Bethel Park. Mrs. Gilliam and Kristen Normile gave us a little insight of what's going on. We look forward to seeing you next month on another episode of Jack of All Trades.